And welcome back, everybody, to All Hang Up and Listen, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room, with over 300 beers to choose from at all of their locations. Please don't forget to check out Fatty Beer. Tell them two goalies when Mike sent you. And, of course, I'd be remiss not to mention Buffalo Logo Apparel, one of the premier spots to get all of your Buffalo sports apparel needs, whether it's your shirts, your hats, your hoodies. They have it all over at Buffalo Logo. You can find them at Buffalo Logo Co. on Instagram and Twitter. You can find Fatty Beer at Fatty Beer on Instagram and Twitter. I am Duane here, joined by producer Steve. Sabres have 2 leads. Sabres blow 2 leads. Where have we heard this story before, Steve? I'll let you kick things off.
Oh, just a little bit more of the same. You almost wanted to praise them for a split second because this time they actually outshot their opponents, where historically, after generating a little offense, they completely take their foot off the gas. So you do want to praise that a little bit. They are getting closer to a shoot-first mentality, which, for all of the 3 minutes that the post-game presser with Lindy emphasized, he liked that the power play also decided to shoot first. I think like 11 of the shots tonight were just power play shots. So, again, generating more chances, just not capitalizing on any of them. But then some of the typical problems that this team runs into reared their ugly head. The main thing just being terrible net front coverage when teams are driving in your net. Jeff Skinner's goal, left all alone in front of the net. Both Nugent Hopkins goals, left all alone in front of the net, whether it was Samuelson or Power, or I think Peterka lost him on the second Hopkins goal. Just kind of a sloppy game. And, you could afford to play James Reimer because one of their 2 biggest offensive weapons wasn't even part of the equation tonight. And, it's not the worst thing in the world to lose by 1 goal to the Edmonton Oilers. A lot of teams do it. A lot of teams lose by a lot more. But when you have the lead twice and once again squander it like you have chronically all season, it's kind of hard to get stoked on the marginal improvements that you see them making in other avenues of the game. Yeah, it was more offensive. Yeah, they tried harder. Yeah, it didn't look like they just shat their pants from start to finish, but, you got to win. You got to win at some point, ever. I think you're muted, brother.
I was muted. You got to find a way to get finish these games out. I've been extremely, and we'll talk about it a little bit more extensively here in a few minutes, but I've been very impressed with Yuri Kulik. How can you not be? He's been
Absolutely
extremely well. He's been one of their best players almost on a nightly basis. I was listening to another podcast earlier today, and while I agree with a lot of their points, they kind of made mention that Kulik isn't ready for the NHL. But I mean, he's kind of proving he is. I mean, what more was he probably going to learn in the AHL? Could have the AHL done him, like another year in the AHL, done him well? Sure, yeah. But I think he's really stepped up to the plate here, given this opportunity. And that kind of leads me to my next question. Like, what direction is this team going in? Because it's pretty clear as day they're not going to make the playoffs. Like, are they? And I want to bring up this DM I just got. It was my request. I just happened to notice it. And the two goalies, one Mike DMs. It's from their handle is called Your Mom's House, and the bio is about tweeting from your mom's basement or whatever. It's a funny profile. Hey guys, love following you, and I'm not by any means a hockey pro, but what the fuck are the Sabres doing? Is this an intentional tank, or are they selling the team, or do they genuinely think this team is made up of players that can win? I just don't get it. I agree. Is this an unintentional tank? Because how do you come into the locker room in Montreal as an owner and look at this team and what they haven't accomplished, the 13 lose, and so they're actually think that the solution is in this room. And it kind of like leads me to my next question, like, why not give these kids from Rochester more of an opportunity? What are you seeing from in Beck Malenstein and Sam Lafferty, Hubel, all of these guys, like, that makes you think that they should be in the lineup over players that you've invested a lot of time in, after drafting? Like you know what I mean? Like you have Isaac Rosen, who I think he's leading the Amerks in points. He might be.
Yeah, he is.
Close.
Especially in goals after today.
And Brett Murray before today, he was leading the team in goals with 17 or 18 or something like that. Brett Murray is a tank. Like, I'm not saying he's going to come into Buffalo and change, but like that's a guy you don't really have on this team now, especially without Jordan Greenway in the lineup. So why? Like, what are we waiting for here? Like this team isn't going to make the playoffs. We are staring 14 years in the face. It's going to happen. And I'm a guy that can be optimistic as the best of them. But again, you just lost a game where you had two separate leads. You blew them both, and you lost in regulation. You just took 2 out of a possible 8 points on this road trip. Like this isn't a team built to win. I don't care what the GM says. I don't care what the owner thinks. They're not built to win. And I feel bad for Lindy Ruff. I mean, Lindy Ruff, he gets some of the blame for sure, but he was inherited this team, this roster. And even at some point during the season, he just kind of shrugged his shoulders like, I'm dumbfounded. Like, I don't get it. Why this team doesn't show up on time, why they're not ready at faceoff, why they get so scared and timid with a lead or protecting a lead, and why they just can't keep their foot on the gas and finish out games. Like, that is a guy who has been in this league for almost 5 decades saying that. There's a lot of stock in that. So what are we doing here? Like it's pretty clear to me that there isn't going to be any move of significance with this team until the trade deadline. And when I say significance, they're probably going to trade Jason Zucker. They should trade Jason Zucker. Some people might not agree with me on that, but you can't make the same mistake with him that you made with Linus Ullmark. You just can't. Jason Zucker is performing at a level this year that can get you a decent haul at the trade deadline. And if you're Kevin Adams, you are trading said asset. You have that conversation with Jason Zucker. Hey, listen, like, you're at this point in your career where you should be going to try and chase a ring. Like, I don't want to hold you back from that, but I'd love to bring you back next season. This contract will be there for you. Like, we will pay you handsomely to come in and continue what you started here in Buffalo. We have the cap space to do so. But I want to trade you, get a decent haul for you, and try and flip it. Where do you want to go? Like, what teams? Like, give me a list of teams you want me to have negotiations with, and we'll figure it out. And we'll try and get a decent haul. And then come the offseason, come free agency, we'll have that conversation. Like I said, this contract will be here waiting for you. If he doesn't do that, you should be fired on the spot. But I say that, how many other times should he have been fired on the spot this year, and he hasn't been? So, I don't know, man. Like, I truly believe there should be a decent, more than a handful of Amerks playing on this team right now, trying to get some value out of these guys who honestly lost value. Isaac Rosen's lost value. He has. He's been the same guy leading the Amerks in points now for a second year in a row. Like, I really don't know what his value is, but it's not what it was, maybe a year or two after we drafted him. It just isn't. I would be giving these guys an opportunity, especially Brent Murray and Isaac Rosen.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. For what it's worth, I will chime in again with the praise to Yuri Kulik. It is nice to know that despite the fact that Jeff Skinner scored against us, Yuri Kulik scored 1 more goal than Jeff Skinner has all year, and he's 20 years old. So, won the trade, won the buyout, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. Whatever. Jeff Skinner's, in the bottom 6 in Edmonton too, because he's kind of a one-dimensional guy, and he's been streaky his whole career. And clearly, whatever magic he had is that, well, he clearly didn't have it last year, and it's still acting pretty cold right now. Um, as far as the direction of this team, I think it's a little bit of a combination of everything. I do think on some level, this organization believes that the people in this room have the capacity to win. And if you're looking across the league, and I'm sure this is something we'll discuss a little bit more further when we talk about certain blockbuster in-season trades that never happened, that literally just happened. With the exception of Rasmus Dahlin, who is a top pairing defenseman on any team in this league, the rest of the forward core, even our very best forwards, are in someone else's middle six. None of those dudes are truly elite. They are either okay, good, or pretty great. Not a single one of them is a game breaker. Same with the D-core. Aside from Rasmus Dahlin, you either have guys that are okay, good, pretty great, or sometimes borderline unplayable. Same with the forward core, to be completely honest. So the direction, it's really tough to say. Obviously, if you want to get that deep with it, get down to the core of that onion and just say, this team isn't good enough, and maybe we need to try again for what would be the fourth time in the last 15. That's a tough pill to swallow, especially given that we've been getting fed horse-sized pills for 15 years now. Do you want to sit through another 3 to 5 years of another fucking rebuild? I know I don't. But also, I can recognize, because I have eyes in my head and they're attached to my skull, attached to my brain, which is attached to a nervous. This is not enough. This isn't doing it. But I guess probably the more practical answer to why there aren't more Amerks in the lineup right now is that to make space for them, you would have to, waive certain players down. And there really is a small number of players who are waivers exempt. So, if you want to, risk losing Lafferty, Kubel, Mallenstein, the two depth defensemen for literally nothing, that's fine. But also, I mean, at the end of the day, the Amerks are having another good winning season. And, maybe they don't want to break up that chemistry. A couple, potentially risk an injury, having some vet take a run at 21-year-old Isaac Rosean just to say, hey, welcome to the league. And then now he's not a part of the Calder Cup run, which I know they're trying to dethrone Hershey big time. So that's the practical answer. Probably just, the construction of rosters. It's just, you'd have to call down a bunch of people to make it logistically possible.
Not breaking. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but apparently just now on Sportsnet, our last 20 minutes on Sportsnet, Elliot Friedman said that the Buffaloes are the favorite to land Elias Pettersson.
Well, yeah, I mean that for what Elias Pettersson could garner on the open market and probably what Vancouver would ultimately want to move a dude like that, Buffalo has in spades. They want high draft picks that will actually amount to something. They want top-end prospects, which we have in spades, and they probably want a couple serviceable roster players to fill that void. So if it was one of those proposed Cousins, Byram, first Rosean crazy fucking packages, we've got that. We've got a couple of different variations of that. Just tell us what you want and we'll do it. Because, yeah, as I was just saying, respectfully to Tage Thompson, on any other team, he's a second-line center. So if you can bring in Elias Pettersson, bump him down, and Dylan Cousins is no longer in the 2C slot to make room for Tage, I'm personally more than okay with that. So yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. And also, we're one of the few teams that can actually stomach $11.6 million against the cap with little to no. We don't have to move heaven and earth to get a third team involved to make that happen. It's just a simple matter of addition and subtraction for us. So whether or not it actually happens, because this organization just doesn't seem to have the stones to make moves like that, or again, maybe they still delusionally think this is the way.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what's going to be what handcuffs it. It's not like we don't have the assets or, the materials that another team would want to trade for an Elias Pettersson type player. we have the funds. It's just, are you willing to go to the bank with it? Yes or no? And that's not a decision that you. That's not a decision we get to make.
What players are involved in that deal?
I mean, I think you would obviously have to give up a guy like Dylan Cousins, just for the sole reason that they would be losing a center. They need someone, if JT Miller becomes their 1C, if he sticks around and Pettersson leaves, solely by virtue that Pettersson has no trade protection whatsoever, and JT Miller can pick his destination, and therefore that ruins the return you get.
Yeah.
Then yeah, they would need somebody to fill a void. JT Miller becomes your 1. Dylan Cousins could be a 2C there. Dylan Cousins' life doesn't radically change aside from his address. He actually gets closer to home than he is now, arguably. So maybe he wouldn't, as much as he might groan to the media that he thinks he would. But yeah, I think it would be Cousins. I think, given how much people keep saying, yeah, there's no way we're going to be, if a Byram extension was going to happen, why hasn't it happened already? He's proved his worth. He's proved that he's a valuable asset to this or any team. So maybe he's not signing. I've heard a lot of people say a lot of people aren't signing extensions simply because there's still like deliberation about exactly how much the cap is going to go up. So I know it was like proposed at the beginning of the year that it was going to go up to like 92.5, but it could be even higher than that. So like probably more than the players, more so probably their agents and representatives don't want to potentially leave money on the table when you're going to sign an extension that could take you to the end of your career. Obviously, that doesn't apply to Byram, but it does apply to a lot of people. Like I know on Puck Soup, they were speaking specifically about a guy like Marchand. Like, why is Brad Marchand not extended with the Boston Bruins? And it's probably because his team is like, hey, you might be leaving a lot of money on the table. You're a Bruin for life. They will pay you whatever they need to keep you around. You know that. I know that. The American people know that. But like, if the cap's going to go up to like 94 or 95 instead of 92.5, yeah, that's a couple extra $1 million that you could put away well until you're like 41. Why would you squander that?
Yeah, I agree. You don't think an Owen Power would be involved with that trade? I know you need to bring in another center, but I mean, how much value does Dylan Cousins, with how he's played the last 2 years, at $7.5 million have in an Elias Pettersson trade? It's kind of tough. If you're Vancouver, you're going to have to add more to that deal because you're taking. Yes, you are getting a center with a lot of potential, but you're also giving up a 100-point-plus player who's also a center. You're going to have to add more to that deal if it's Dylan Cousins. But if it's Owen Power, obviously I think he's still like 3rd in the league amongst defensemen with even straight points. I mean, we know about his deficiencies defensively. I think there's more. You probably have to give up less trading Owen Power than you do Dylan Cousins. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it could honestly be both of them, and if that's ultimately what it comes down to, because I think the argument just because it's Bowen Byram doesn't have a deal going into next year that you can.
If you're trading Owen Power,
Byram. But in the scenario that either one of those two defensemen is packaged with Dylan Cousins, who's kind of like a rehab project on real teams at this point, then yeah, it's much more easy logistically to entertain the idea of Bowen Byram because he doesn't have a deal lined up yet. There's room to negotiate. Whereas with Owen Power, for a fact this is his number. This number is going to last for 7 more years after this one? 7? Yeah. Until 2030. Yeah, until 2031. So yes, 7 more years after this, which, not a lot of teams want to plan that far into the future. I mean, especially with the Vancouver Canucks, they do have Quinn Hughes up at the end of the 2027 season. He'll only be 27 at that time. So that's obviously a gigantic extension to keep in the back of your mind. But I mean, obviously the forward core is pretty much locked up solid. JT Miller is locked up for a long time. Jake DeBrusk, long time. Dakota Joshua's got a lot of years. Even guys like Nils Hoglander's signed till 2028.
Yeah.
But yeah, none of those guys are like, break the piggy bank kind of players like Quinn Hughes is. So yeah, I mean, if you don't want to think about the fact that you might be paying Owen Power more than what you're paying Quinn Hughes right now to be lucky to be a second line player
Yeah.
on that team, that's a little bit harder to stomach than picking up Bo Byram who makes less than 4 right now. You might be able to argue to sign for less than 8 for a long-term extension if they get to continue to play on a winning team. So that's kind of why I only just shift to Byram. Personally, I feel I've seen more good out of Bo and Byram's play than I have at Owen Powers, and they are somewhat close. Obviously, Bo Byram's had a few more years in the league, but a lot of those years were marred by injury. So you could either say what's more valuable: injury seasons and more of them on a winning team, or full injury-free seasons in Buffalo where you have all the time in the world to develop and
Yeah.
your game's still kind of struggling. If I had to choose, I personally would choose Bo Byram, but again, I think just the length and price point of Owen Power's contract, I think he's here. If one of those two defensemen gets packaged in a deal like that, it would hands down have to be Bo Byram. It's just so much easier.
Sending Bo and Byram back to Vancouver.
Yeah, Bo Byram.
I don't know. I don't know if they're. I mean, I think they would probably much rather have the guy who's already locked up at a reasonable number that they. I don't know. Not a guy who's going to be entering restricted free agency. They're not sure is going to want to resign there. That's just my opinion, and I think Buffalo should, to your point, want Bo and Byram more than Owen Power with the way they both played. They're both relatively the same age. One's won a cup, one, hasn't won a goddamn thing. We did get a comment here on Twitter from Jord at Jord of Lord, or Lord of Jord, sorry. He said Hellenius, Cousins, and Quinn for Pettersson.
I don't think that's enough.
I don't think it's enough, but it's interesting because Quinn is a high draft pick. Cousins has scored 30 goals in this league. Hellenius, another high draft pick. I think that'd be a good, if you're not involving Owen Power in that trade, that's a good base to start from, right? Like, I think that those are all 3 former first-round draft picks right there.
Yeah, and, Constant Hellenius has kind of cooled off in the AHL right now, but, I mean, he's still at 18 points on the season in less than 40 games, which for an 18-year-old is pretty darn good. So, I mean, there's nothing but room to grow there. But yeah, I mean, I do, just looking at their blue line, given how weak the left side is in comparison to the right side for Vancouver, I could see them still wanting to try to get Power or Byram as part of that package. And if that means, one less prospect going the other way. I've personally fantasized about the idea of Quinn in a trade with Ottawa just to send Jack Quinn back to his hometown. Because anytime he plays in Ottawa, he lights it up.
I'll say this when it comes to Jack Quinn. If he were to be traded, I think one of the more interested teams might be Utah just because of the connection there with Andre Turigny, who coached him for the Ottawa 67s when in the OHL. We had him on the show, and he spoke highly of both Quinn and Marco Rossi. So, I mean, but that's kind of getting really deep in the weeds, just staying focused on Pettersson in Vancouver. I don't know. Like to your point, your first point, I think that they would want a center in return, but also like it's kind of hard to say no to another top defenseman. A guy, especially a guy who's already under contract.
Yeah, no, I mean I don't disagree with any of that, but
he said it on Sportsnet, John. I guess he said it on Sportsnet. I'm assuming it must have been like on Hockey Night in Canada tonight, possibly. So
I think before the Toronto-Ottawa game, probably.
Yeah,
because I think that started quasi recently, or maybe there's a night game going on that I don't know about.
And Fried is like the Schefter of the NHL. He's usually the first one to get the breaking news, and so if it's coming from him, I'm going to believe there's some truth to it for sure.
Yeah, he usually doesn't just throw that stuff out in the world just to throw a grenade, to stir the pot and cause a little panic. There is usually there's usually some smoke, you know, there's usually fire to come along with that smoke. But yeah, I guess since we've armchair GM'd about a potential Elias Pettersson trade, why don't we talk about the the elephant in the room here about the big blockbuster trade that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
My
Mikko
God.
Rantanen, was it Mikko Rantanen and Jack Drury? No, sorry. No, Nikas and Jack Drury going to Colorado in exchange for Mikko Rantanen.
And Taylor Hall from
Taylor
Chicago.
Hall. Well, Taylor Hall per Chicago, and Taylor Hall I think the Chicago just got their own third round draft pick back, and
Pretty
they were
much.
taking $4.5 million of salary in the deal.
Yeah, I mean, no one seems to. I think the best response I saw to that was Chicago wanted to play with Carolina and Colorado so bad, so they just gave their kid brother an unplugged PlayStation controller.
Literally, yeah.
Seriously. But yeah, that is just, and again, that kind of goes back to the main point with the Sabres here, is that Carolina is already battling hard to lead and secure the lead in the Metro.
Mm-hmm.
And most teams that are in the point of being in a first place position, some GMs might sit back and go, things are going good. Why rock the boat? Carolina said, no, we need more. We can do better, because that is a team which has a lot of players that are very, very good, fantastic players, but none of them are game breakers. Mikko Rantanen is a fucking game breaker. Yes, and the reason people don't talk about that much is because that he came from a team that had 4 game breakers. McKinnon, Landeskog pre-injury, Makar. These are all on any other team, they would be the only player you talk about. But Mikko Rantanen was one of 4 of these freaking juggernauts for this club.
Yeah.
And yet, his stat line is just unbelievable, particularly in the postseason, which is the place where Carolina needs help the most. So they didn't want to rest on their laurels and say Aho and Svechnikov and Nietzsche are going to be enough. No, we're going to move one of those guys and leverage it to get somebody back that's beyond elite. And again, to bring it back to Buffalo, if we had Svechnikov or Aho, that would be the only goddamn player I talk about, because they're that good compared to everything else.
Dude,
even that's not good enough. You got to do more.
That first
and they did.
Carolina is so filthy now.
Rantanen,
Svechnikov, and Aho, that's possibly the best first line in the National Hockey League, right? That's disgusting.
Yeah, that's fucking hard to beat. Yeah, that's yucky. That is yucky, and that hurts. And yeah, it'd be nice to see, somewhat see Taylor Hall get his groove back a little bit. He's, I mean, obviously things. Obviously things didn't go well when he was here for so many reasons, but you never want to see a dude just fail. With the exception of Tony DeAngelo, you don't want to see anybody just outright fail in this league. Like, the league is better when players are good. No one wins when you have sucky players out on the ice. Case in point, this franchise.
Yeah.
From
new viewer on YouTube, shout out to Eric Reinhardt here. I think it's the first time we've seen you in the chat. I don't think it will ever change as long as the same man owns both teams. I don't think it's a coincidence that when he got the Bills, things totally went south for the Sabres. I think they were heading south for the Sabres even before that, but still, I see your point. I think obviously the priority is the Bills, and this, I've always said it. The Sabres are essentially the redheaded stepchild in the backseat of a car with both windows rolled down in the middle of winter. That's who they are. While the Bills are chilling, riding shotgun with the heat blasting.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I love the idea of Elias Pettersson because he's just a fantastic talent. The only thing that really concerns me, Steve, is just the rumors of what went wrong in Vancouver between him and JT Miller. Essentially, that it was him criticizing Pettersson and Pettersson not being able to handle that, which that concerns me because you're going to go from that situation to this situation and think things are going to get better. Like you think if you got Mike Harrington asking you questions, he's going to lay off. You know what I mean? Like I hope there's more to it than that because you can't bring in mentally soft players into the situation. We have enough mentally soft players.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And again, we'll never know what's going on in the room. There's always more to the story than what we get. But I mean, yeah, it may not even be the criticism of his game. It could just be the way that he criticized. There's a nice way to tell somebody they're doing a bad job, and then for all we know, JT Miller was just telling her to give his fucking balls a tug, you tit fucker.
Yeah, right.
And you hear that too many times. Eventually, you just want to say "fuck you, Shorzy."
Fuck you, Shorzy.
Yeah,
And the new season's already out on Crave TV. I can't wait for Bad Hulu.
Oh yeah. It's gonna be fantastic.
You want to hit some of these highlights from the mayhem in Rochester tonight?
Yeah.
You want to go over the stat line real quick before we bring that up?
Well, the scoreboard let us know that it was a 6-3 victory for the Rochester Americans, which included, as of right now, the box score is still crediting that third goal to Isaac Roseanne, and it was not a deflection from Brett Murray, so he did get a hat trick in this game. And classy Brett Murray let Noah Ostlund score a nice empty netter to seal it at the end. But the real highlight in this one is that at the end of the second period, there was a full-scale line brawl between the two clubs and an almost goalie fight that the refs ruined and broke up, which resulted in 122 penalty minutes. And total in the game, there were 160 penalty minutes because the way it broke down is at the start of the third, Hartford was down a man. I guess they took the extra penalty. I guess they thought that they instigated the whole damn thing, so they gave them the extra 2. That's where the 2 and the 122 comes from. But it was like 12 10-minute misconducts. So they start 5-on-4. Almost instantly after they kill that first penalty, somebody gets called for a high stick. 45 seconds after that, somebody cross-checks somebody, so Hartford's killing a 5-on-3. In the middle of the 5-on-3, they get a bench minor because the coach is just barking at the refs going, you're fucking blind. What are you doing? You're a bunch of assholes. And then somewhere in that 5-on-3, one of the defenders puts it over the glass and has a delay of game. So for the third period, Hartford was probably killing a 5-on-3 or a 5-on-4 for the first 8 minutes of the last frame of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And for what it's worth, to their credit, they did score 2 quick goals to take it from a 5-1 score to a 5-3 score. And given how they had to mention a few times that this would be a career high for Felix Sandstrom to get 5 consecutive wins in the AHL, I was very nervous. But they eked out the W. They got it done. Not for a lack of trying, but yeah, it was a absurd amount of shots and insane. I think it ended up being exactly 160 penalty minutes for the entire night. And yeah, big night, 3-point night for Noah Ostlund as well. 2 assists, 1 goal. He's obviously, he missed a lot of the season with injury, but since coming back around Christmas, took him a couple weeks to find his game. But I think, including the 3-point night tonight, I think he's got like 7 or 8 in his last 5 games, which, pretty good. Like that. Yeah. Again, Hellenius has cooled off a little bit, but whatever. Isaac Roseanne's now leading the team in goals with 19. Brett Murray's probably leading the team in points still, given that I think he got like 3 assists tonight, including the empty netter. Yeah, good night for the club all around. I think they are securely in second place in their division. So, things are going good. And usually, obviously getting the higher placement with the Calder Cup. They break them down in 5-game series for the first few series, and getting that third home game is, very, very beneficial.
Yeah.
real good stuff there. But
we're gonna play the highlights here real quick that we're gonna upload.
Gets it pinned along the wall, and the time will expire here in the second period, and then a definite after-the-fact shot on by Belzile. Sandstrom got his.
Is this coming in real scrambled for you, Steve? Can you see it?
See it a little bit.
Shaking the gloves with a man. Is he going to go? He will.
that actually happened live.
Oh, wow, okay.
Gloves are off. Sandstrom's gloves are off. A goalie fight. Sandstrom and Garand, and the referee is going to break it up before they can get going, but Garand does not want to dismiss.
I remember seeing this highlight. They wouldn't let the goalies go.
Everybody else has their gloves down too.
Let him go.
Slaggert is now going in on a man. Komarov is wrestling someone on the board.
Slaggert got fed his lunch, but everyone else held up pretty well.
Slaggert dropped the gloves. Now Tulio skates off the ice.
Komarov feeding this kid his lunch.
I saw Komarov in real life. You know, I mean, I've seen him in development game before, but in game against Lehigh Valley last weekend, and that guy is an absolute treat.
Oh yeah, he is a small bus. Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, what's up,
Ryan Johnson? Joshua.
No, that's Joshua.
The feed is really like slow. It's hard to see.
Yeah, it would have been nice, but yeah, I just tried to screen grab it.
No, it's now all I see is the stats page. Is that all you're seeing right now?
Yeah, that's what they did. And then I think it's just going to be them picking up their gear. That's pretty much all they show you.
Regardless, an absolute Donnybrook and a win for Rochester. Nice to see some life down there. We do have another new viewer here on YouTube, John. I'm sorry if I butcher your name, Reeser. I'd like to see Hellenius called up for a few games like they did with Kozak. Wouldn't mind seeing what they have in that kid. I know he's having, an okay season down in Rock. Had a decent showing at the World Juniors. I wouldn't mind seeing him called up for a couple games just to see what you got in him.
Yeah, I still think the priority ought to go to either Murray or Rosen, just because of their top performers.
I don't disagree with you, but they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, I don't think it hurts that I bring up those guys and see what you have them for a handful of games. You're not saying you're going to keep them up here. Just let them play a handful of games and get the experience. They've earned it. That's why you perform the way you do in the AHL is to get the opportunity to play in the NHL. So a guy like Rosen has probably earned that opportunity. I'm not saying you keep him up here the rest of the season. You don't. Same thing with Hellenius. I would just like to see what you have in those guys.
Well, who let this frickin' joker in here? Chiefs are the best? Ew.
Yeah. All right.
So straight to jail.
But hey, listen, any final thoughts before we get out of here, Steve?
Well, the boys are back at home, and honestly, I kind of feel bad for Razor. His Hall of Fame induction game is this coming Friday against Nashville, and I really do want to see people show up to give him the respect he deserves. Like, obviously he put his body on the line for the club back in the day, but he's been a real soldier for the franchise, just as part of the media team for a couple decades now. So it'd be nice to see it. It'd be nice to see him get his roses, but I'm gonna feel so fucking bad when that happens to like a 60% full barn, just because we want to show up for that, but then do we want to sit through the rest? I mean Nashville's kind of on the up and up right now. I think they're on a 5-game winning streak, so they could be extending it to 7 or 8 games by the time they meet us. I don't know what this year's U2 concert was, but they're trying to claw back into it despite having fallen completely off the rails there. But yeah, I know I'm also the guy that says don't go to games, but maybe make an exception for Razor if you can find a cheap pair of tickets in the nosebleeds. Let's not hold Rob Ray accountable for the sins of management. He's a good dude, stands by the club. He deserves to have some people cheer for him. Yeah, let's pay our respects to the dude.
We believe it or not, next week, Wednesday, 5 years since the phone call in the WBR. 5 years.
Boy.
And I was texting with Andrew Peters today about it, and I said to him, like, you could literally play that phone call to somebody who's never heard it, and they would think that phone call was made yesterday. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, I mean the comments about the typos on the Chinese knockoff jerseys might not quite play. It's like, what is he talking about? But other than that, yeah, all the other core complaints was just, same thing. So it's all this. It's like you just got to see something different.
Yeah.
And if that comes in the form of an Elias Pettersson trade, sign me up. Let's go.
Yeah. Another new viewer on YouTube. How do we trade Hudson? In turn, it means Cole Hudson. Well, technically, we passed up on him twice because that was the second round pick that we traded to Washington for Beck Malenstein. But we also had the pick right before Washington, and we chose Adam Kleber instead of Cole Hudson. And then with our pick, Washington ran to the podium and drafted Cole Hudson. So it's kind of a double whammy there if you think about it.
Yep.
So
gotta love that.
Yeah.
Just for funsies, I'll peek and see how he's doing. 2 whole points in his rookie campaign with the University of Minnesota Duluth. 1 goal, 1 assist in 20 games. But he's a freshman. He's probably not getting that ice time.
Adam Kleber?
Yep, Adam Kleber.
Well, he's not supposed to be an offensive defenseman. He's a stay-at-home defenseman, a big guy.
Big boy.
But anyways, just remember everything's been brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from at all their locations. Make sure you check out Fatty Beer and let them know 2 goalies, 1 Mike sent you, and of course, Buffalo logo apparel. Whether it's your shirts, your hats, your hoodies, they have a great Bills Mafia selection, all locally designed. You want to shop small business. You can't find anything better, honestly, when it comes to the Bills than at Buffalo Go. You can find them at Buffalo Go Co. on Instagram and Twitter. You know, if you're looking to have a beer, you can find Fatty Beer at Fatty Beer on Instagram and Twitter, fattybeer.com. Was Hudson an actual Sabres prop? No. So the Sabres could have drafted him with their first second-round pick. They chose not to. They chose to draft Adam Kleber. But then the second-round pick that they traded to Washington for Beck Malenstein is the pick that Washington used to draft Lane Hudson immediately after Buffalo pick.
Cole Hudson.
Sorry, Cole Hudson. Yeah, sorry, Cole Hudson.
Yeah.
But we're all out of time. So with that being said, guys, if you enjoy our content, we've built a really strong community here. Help us get through these post games. I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't be able to do it with all you guys. You have no idea how much we appreciate you always hopping on with us after these games, whether we're going live immediately after the game or a couple hours after, like we did tonight. You guys always show up and show out. So if you enjoy this and you're watching on YouTube, please make sure you hit the like button, leave a comment. It helps with the algorithm. And of course, hit subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you know when we go live. And if you're watching on Twitter or Facebook, make sure you subscribe there too. Hit the follow button. You can find me at Duane39, as you see on the screen there. You can find Producer Steve at 2G1M Buffalo Rome on Twitter. And you can find my co-host Connor Hurley at TheHurls13. And, of course, you can find the show at 2 Goalies 1 Mike. I am Duane for Producer Steve and Connor Hurley, who couldn't be with us tonight. You guys have a fantastic night. And as always, for better or for worse, go Sabres.